Okay, Commissioner Gregory? Here. President Brennan? Commissioner Chan-Carali? Commissioner Lorenz?
Here.
Commissioner Mateusz?
Here.
Okay, would you like to just introduce our council?
Yeah. Our regular council, Bill Parkin, William Parkin is unable to attend tonight, so we unfortunately have Pearl here standing in.
Great, thank you.
Welcome. Thank
So this is the time when we can take public comments, and if anyone in the public has something to say that's not on the agenda, you can fill out a speaker slip, and now's the time to speak. So, Dan, you have something, I don't know if it's on the agenda or not.
I don't believe so.
Okay, yeah, so, oh, there it is behind you. There's
Okay.
That's so that the video can,
Okay, no worries. I know I'm limited to 3 minutes. I'm gonna do my best not to talk so fast. I think I sound like an auctioneer. But so if I may go over by a couple seconds. Okay, so my name is Dan Augustine. I represent Bay Green Marine Sanitation. We have a contract through the end of June with the Harbor District to provide liveaboard services to remove sewage from their boats. I'd like to note at the outset that we're the only company on the West Coast with the technical expertise and depth of both staff and equipment to reliably perform the next RFP. I'd like to take this opportunity to explain publicly why we are not going to submit a bid. First of all, it's 41 pages long. We have 30 days to complete it. We received it May 6th. We have until June 6th. I contacted the Harbor District in January to say, this is coming up, we would like to renew. If it's going to renew, we have big things happening May and June. We'd like to get a head start on this. We've done numerous RFPs with many government agencies. We've never had one 30 days and 41 pages. It is actually twice as long as the one we had in Berkeley. And the one in Berkeley took 6 months to finish. The other thing I'd like to say about the 41 pages, it doesn't address what your actual needs are. We're not sure how your needs were developed, but it wasn't by consulting the 5 years of historical data that we've accumulated over your actual service needs. It also omits specific federal employee liability requirements, and it allows companies not following the law to gain an advantageous position through lower costs and thereby lower bids. Third thing is, it requires that we maintain pump out stations. Now, if these were new pump out stations, it wouldn't be an issue. However, the pump out station in Pillar Point has been so poorly maintained since it was installed. When I was out at the beginning of April to perform a repair, I took a bolt off the pump and shifted it, and a piece of pipe fell and broke into 3 pieces. I was just there today doing another repair. The other pump out has been slowly dying over the last 3 or 4 years. We use it every week. Now it's to the point we have to hold it in the water for 30, 40 seconds just to get it primed. It's unusual, and it means the pump's not working right. We reported it, and they said, oh, well, it's really tough for us to fix. So if it's tough for you to fix, why are we going to be held responsible for all maintenance? The fourth thing is there's a 15% increase in the number of services you're requesting from what we initially came up with 5 years ago. That's a 250% increase over your historical use. 250% more than you ever asked us to perform before. And suddenly, it's in this new RFP. It also requires weekly service to Pillar Point. You have so few services in Pillar Point, it's barely justifiable for us to come out more than once a month. But we do every 2 weeks because they're livable. Since we did this with Mr. Grindy and Mr. Peter, oh, I forget his last name, I'm sorry. There's essentially been no management of the contract. We regularly get reports from people in the Harbor District saying, remove these people from the list, remove these people from the list. And we've watched what you asked for go down, down, down. In the meantime, we kind of tried to get in touch with Mr. McGrath after Mr. Grindy left, and he said, I have way too much on my plate, talk to the Harbor Masters. I'll speed it up. The Harbor Masters said, you know, everything's fine, we're not that familiar with it, keep on trucking, we'll check up the chain, if we need anything, we'll let you know. That's what I heard from John Draper and Charles White, until both of them retired. Since then, we've tried contacting Mr. Moran, no return phone calls. The one time I did speak with him, he said, no, I said, if you're even interested in continuing this contract, he said, oh no, we're interested in continuing the contract, we're committed to the environment. Okay, but nobody wants to see our data. The current Harbor Masters, they said, we'll run it up the chain, we'll let you know. So in our last, we were supposed to have a quarterly meeting. We tried, and nobody wants to respond to us. And your current RFP also requires the vendor to manage all initial contacts with your liveaboard list. Essentially, you're giving out private client contact information. We're not getting it directly from them. That goes against what we do. You know, that's kind of creepy in today's privacy day and age. It's just creepy just to give it to somebody and expect us to make phone calls. We were also notified in writing that the Harbor District does not want to pay more than $2,000 a month you're currently spending. That barely covers our costs now. The new RFP
Could you, we're interested in what you're saying, and it's a lot of information to take in verbally. Would it be possible for you to send us an email that just bullet points out?
I can, and I can just finish these last couple of points. I'm happy to.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The new RFP also greatly expands services. It requires 2 boats to be dedicated to your harbor, and then requires us to pay the dock rent. Our tech labor and that dock rent alone is $2,000 a month. No insurance, no fuel, nothing else. All that said, we decided to pass on bidding on the RFP and request a commercial activity permit instead. But we were told no commercial activity permits will be issued. The RFP winner will have exclusive rights to service both harbors. So this sudden relationship between a commercial activities permit and the RFP and a $2,000 limit, it sounds like extortion. It's basically do what we want, do more than you were doing for the same money, or lose all the business that you've built outside of this contract and without our help. So I would like to know, has the board voted to change the commercial activities permit to require an ongoing contract with the Harbor Commission? And if so, are all industries affected or just ours? And if it's just ours, why? And the last thing I want to ask you is, what's your plan on July 1st when we remove our boats just before the busiest holiday of the year? So in summary, I just ask that you grant us a commercial activities permit. Your RFP doesn't make sense. If you want to redo it, we're happy to help. But in the meantime, cancel the RFP, issue a commercial activity permit so we can continue to work to keep the water clean, and let your voters choose. And that's it. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate the action.
Thank you. Alrighty, so next we have commissioner comments. Does anybody have anything?
Yes.
Nancy?
I do. So I've been going to the special district association meetings, and there's a lot of discussion there about LAFCO and what their role is. So I decided to meet with Martha Poyados, who is the executive director of LAFCO, to get an overview of her role and what it is that LAFCO really does. And I learned that their oversight focuses on the importance of transparency, and I was struck with what a good job the Harbor District does. So, for instance, ahead of most agencies and municipalities in our area, we've already adopted districted elections. In 2018, the district received the Transparency Certificate of Excellence and Individual Special District Governance Certificate by the Special District Leadership Foundation as a testament to the district's standards of open governance, which you all know, but I'm just learning about. Our finance policies are driven by standards of accountability. And a specific question I asked her in light of our recent meetings on the budget was, how many special districts use the encumbrance method of accounting? And she said almost all of them. I thought that was very interesting. So the direction we're going in is entirely in line with the kinds of transparency and accountability that LAFCO looks for. And I wanted to just take this moment to thank staff and my fellow commissioners for all the work that they do and have done long before I got here that have contributed to the district's high standards. Thank you all.
Thank you. Nancy, did she mention anything about district elections being something that they're trying to encourage?
No, we just discussed them, and
Okay.
And I mentioned that we'd already
Transitioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And she seemed pleased with that.
Okay.
Oh, nice, thank you.
Okay. Did you have anything?
Just my normal reporting out on the meetings that I've attended. So I went to Climate Action Leadership Forum. I was invited to go to this, and it was hosted by the Sierra Club and had just elected speaking on what they were doing on climate change. And so featured in there were some of the things that the Harbor District is doing through its Climate Change Resiliency Committee. and also went to a talk given by Charles Lester, former executive director of the Coastal Commission, and he talked about the Coastal Act and what's happening now with respect to climate change, and gave some examples of what progressive organizations are doing about climate change. And that's it.
That was a great meeting.
Yeah.
Tom, did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to say that Coastside Fishing Club just received another 80,000 salmon. So we got about 240,000 right now that we're protecting, getting acclimated, and after they get fully vetted with the cooler salt water after the long freshwater trip, they'll be released and we'll be ready for another batch of 240,000. Our goal is about $750,000 this year. And that's on the good side. On the bad side, Coastside Fishing Club is got a lot of people that use our launch ramp. And there's 2 large threads on the Coastside Fishing Club website with how utterly disappointed everyone is with our launch ramp and its current state of affairs. I keep trying to stem things off and say on my last post we just got 1 bid. We're working as fast as we can, but it's just a symbol of governmental bureaucracy and what we have to go through to bring a project to fruition.
Okay. So I'd just like to mention that tonight I'm driving to Sacramento for the California Special District Association Legislative Days. So that's a 2-day commitment starting tomorrow, where members of special districts will be meeting with legislators to bring them some awareness to issues that impact special districts throughout California. And so that should be interesting, and it's always a good opportunity to learn. Also wanted to mention that I was able to attend the recent Surfrider board meeting it was my first Surfrider board meeting. And that I was very impressed by the board, and we talked a little bit about safety training for surfers and the need for that. We also talked about concerns regarding water quality and the fact that the water quality testing that they have done for years indicates that we continue to have a chronic water quality problem at Pillar Point Harbor, which the district's already aware of, and the county also tests the water. And we talked about possibly establishing a technical advisory committee that would start to consider ways to treat the water before polluted water runs off into the harbor. And there's a long ways to go with that. I am not a member of Surfrider, but I enjoyed the ability to sit in on the board meeting, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so next we have consent. Would anybody like to make a motion to approve consent items?
I'll move to approve consent items.
Okay, I'll second.
You second?
Yep.
Okay. Commissioner Riley?
Yes.
Commissioner Lorenz?
Yes.
Commissioner Matoush?
Aye.
President Bennett?
Aye. And we're now on to item 9, which is draft final 2019-20 operating budget and capital improvement program, and Julie's gonna give us a report on that.
Good evening, President Brennan, Commissioners. Attached is the draft final 2019-20 operating and capital improvement program, or CIP. Review and discussion allows for additional input before the final budget is presented to this board at the June 19th meeting for consideration of approval and adoption. The preliminary budget was approved at the April 17th, 2019 meeting and included the separation of the operating budget and the CIP. the carry forward of unspent CIP contract amounts or encumbrances, and eliminating the need to adopt CIP appropriations prior to the approval of a contract unless it falls within the general manager's authority of $25,000. The attached draft refines the separation and provides additional explanations and descriptions. Certain information has been included in this draft as a step towards implementing Government Finance Officers Association recommended best budget practices. Now, if you could please turn to page 9-8 or page 5 of the attached budget document. There's a section that the heading is Budget Report Presentations Changes from Prior Fiscal Year.
Which, I'm sorry, what page again? 9-8?
9-8,
Okay,
page
got
5, yeah. And there are two distinct sections in this budget document. The operating budget, which presents ongoing activities for a fiscal year period, and the CIP section, which estimates capital asset costs for the current year and the next 5 fiscal years. Next, a procedural change was made to allow for the rollover of open encumbrances or purchase orders across fiscal year boundaries. This will ensure that appropriations associated with board-approved contracts will carry forward accurately across the fiscal year boundary. For example, if the board approved a $1 million contract tonight, the unspent balance of the contract as of July 1st would be appropriated for the next fiscal year without further action by this board. It is also recommended that appropriation of $200,000 be approved for the purchase of vessels, vehicles, and for assets that meet the threshold of the $10,000 asset threshold but are within the discretion of the general manager's spending authority of $25,000. Also, terminology used for governmental funds, available fund balances referred to as unassigned reserves. The district uses an enterprise fund for accounting instead of a governmental fund. And so in order to determine the available resources at any given time, the district can review the balance sheet to determine the working capital. The nomenclature has been changed from reserves to working capital to be in line with the enterprise fund budgeting and accounting process. Lastly, the allocation of property tax revenue has been changed, which I'll discuss in more detail shortly. If you can please turn to page 9-15. And this is a chart that you've seen in various forms in previous meetings, but I'll just go through it quickly again. You can see now that under the operating budget summary, if you compare 2019-20 operating budget with the 2018-19 projections, the percentages are pretty much in line and shows you a picture of this current year versus what we're proposing in the next year's budget. For example, operating revenues are budgeted to increase 1.35% due to projected inflationary increases in lease income and rates and fees. The non-operating revenues are budgeted to increase by 1.61% due to an anticipated increase in property tax revenue of 2.03%, offset by a decrease in interest income due to the spending of cash balances. Salaries, wages, and benefit expenditures are projected to increase by 6.42% due to anticipated filling of currently vacant positions, along with salary, wage, and benefit cost increases. Non-personnel expenditures are budgeted to decrease by 1.05%, and this is mainly due to an anticipated decrease in legal settlement costs. And the fiscal year 2018 projection includes $850,000 in biennial election costs and a one-time $2.3 million payment to the California Public Employees Retirement System to fund a portion of long-term unfunded liability, where the 1920 operating budget does not anticipate these one-time expenditures. If you want to turn now to page 9-17, this talks about the public and enterprise services. Currently, in this year's budget, the district allocates 60% of public activities and 40% to enterprise activities. This is a little bit different presentation, and where we're saying that all district property is for the enjoyment of the public. And in addition to providing the public with boating facilities, the district provides coastal trail access and maintenance, beach access, public fishing piers, park and landscape maintenance, public parking, trash removal, bay trail access and maintenance, search and rescue operations, toxic environmental cleanup, public restrooms, and public outreach and education. These public services and activities serve a broad segment of San Mateo County's population and visitors. The district receives property tax revenue from San Mateo County property owners, and that property tax is used to fund the administration department, any operating deficits of Pillar Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina, and a portion of the capital improvement program. For fiscal year 2019-20, the district estimates that $640,000 will be used for Oyster Point Marina public operations, $745,000 for Pillar Point Harbor public operations, $2,245,000 for administrative functions, and $3,655,000 towards the funding of the capital improvement program, for a total of $7,285,000 of anticipated property tax revenue. The next page is page 9.33, and now we're getting into section 2 of the 5-year capital improvement program.
9-33.
Yes, page 30. And this is the long-term forecast section of the budget document. This isn't looking anymore at the fiscal year. It's looking forward, although it does identify projects that we believe are going to be completed in fiscal year 2019-20, or identification that they'll at least be started in those years. If you look at the top section where it says cost estimates over the current year, we expect to use about $2.9 million in working capital for our capital improvement program, $7.5 million next fiscal year, $21.3 million in fiscal year 2021, $6.1 million in fiscal year 21-22, $5.3 million in 22-23, and $4.1 million in 23-24. If you look under the funding sources, we anticipate getting certain grant money and using the district's working capital. So you see funding, FEMA funding, that we expect to get some capital grant money this year and in the following year for the dredging project, for example. If you go down, you look at working capital, and this is the amount of working capital that we will need to fund these various projects. It's $2.7 million this year, $6.3 million next fiscal year, and $14.3 million in fiscal year 2021, and so on and so forth. If you look at fiscal year 21-22, you see another line item that says funding to be decided, and that is identification of when, if the district were to carry out this capital improvement program in the timeline that we're proposing, which is fairly aggressive, then we would need to start identifying additional funding of $1.7 million in 21-22 in order to fund all of the capital improvement projects that have been identified throughout the years that are shown on the next few pages. All the projects listed have been vetted by this board on the following pages. And if you turn to the next couple of pages, you can see what each of those individual projects are. And then it shows a little picture with a summary of what we expect to do in this next coming up fiscal year, 19-20. If you want to turn to page 9-40, now this again goes into a little bit more detail of the CIP appropriations and estimated encumbrance reappropriation process. And what would happen when we go through this process is when a project that is listed as part of the program has gone to an RFP and the recommendation to approve the contract comes to this board, there will be a motion approving associated appropriations to go along with that capital project. So the large variances that we're reporting, if you looked back on the third quarter financial report and the consent item, it showed that we budgeted a little over $10 million, but we're expected to spend between $2 and $3 million by the end of June 30th. So we wouldn't expect to see that kind of variance at the end of a fiscal year in the future with this methodology. Yeah. I'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Just for this estimate here that we're looking at, is this just an example, or what is this exactly?
This is the estimated encumbrances to be reappropriated. And so what the original contract amount is that there's been a contract that's been presented to this board for approval. And then any change orders, for example, the West Trail Erosion Project for GHD came to this board most recently on 4/17/19 last month to approve an increase in the contract for $618,000. Now there's a total contract of a little over $1 million. And we think that we're going to spend $433,000 by the end of this fiscal year, by June 30th, 2019, which would mean that we would reappropriate the outstanding contract amount of $618,000. But say our estimate is not good, say we only spend, instead of the $433,000, say we only spent $100,000, then that extra $333,000 would be added to the $618 and get reappropriated, if that makes sense. So
okay,
this is an estimate of the
things that have already been
approved.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and to try to reappropriate it and estimate what is not going to be spent by July 1st just leads to bigger budgetary variances.
Okay. Is that the whole presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions for Julie or discussion?
I don't have any questions, but I'm very happy with the way this is being done. I really appreciate the work you guys have done, and it's very clear to me, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, this seems easier to understand for me than past budgets, so, and I haven't been paying that close attention to the change, the change in process, but it just seems easier to process, so I appreciate that, especially clear on where grant funding and different funding sources are coming from and that sort of thing.
Also good to know where we're going to have to look for funding in the future,
Yeah.
which is really important.
Yeah, and I know it's been a lot of hard work, so
Yeah.
thank you for that. Did you have anything, Nancy?
No, I really do think that it kind of provides I'm not familiar with, I'm just learning about this method of accounting, but it really seems to me that it provides a snapshot that you don't get in traditional accounting, and especially for the Harbor District that has such a large budget, you kind of end up wading through financial reports, and this seems very clear and straightforward, so.
Definitely.
And so just to recap, this budget's gonna come back to us at the next meeting, is that right?
Right,
So-
for adoption.
For adoption, so tonight is like preliminary, what do we call it, preliminary approval or something?
Yeah, tonight is just giving you an opportunity to say, I would like to see something changed or something added before it comes back for
Okay.
approval.
Okay, so we don't need to approve it tonight
No.
or vote on it, okay?
No.
So it doesn't sound like anybody has any changes, I'm not hearing any. So I think we're ready to move on. Great, that was easy. So next we have item 10, which is rates and fees effective July 1, 2019, and subsequent adjustments by Consumer Price Index. And this is also Julie's item.
Okay, first, if you could please see the revised motion that we're recommending, which is to approve rates and fees amended to reflect increases of 3.9%, which is equal to the average annual increase in the 2018 Consumer Price Index for the San Francisco Bay Area, and other changes as proposed, except for the increase to the recreational vehicle parking fee. It has come to my attention that this item, the recreational vehicle parking fee, is under additional review and consideration, so we're not recommending that that fee be increased at this point in time. So a little bit of the background and overview, the Harbor Commission approved changes to the rates and fee schedules on June 21st, 2017 for fiscal year 2017-18. The Harbor Commission also approved increasing rates and fees by the CPI in all subsequent years. In fiscal year 2018-19, the rates were increased by the published CPI of 3.2%. The majority of the rates and fees on the proposed attached schedules represent an increase by the published CPI of 3.9%, except proposed rates for Pillow Point Harbor and Oyster Point Marina are rounded to the nearest dollar. The rate changes may not exactly be 3.9% because of that rounding. Fees listed that are below $13 are not increased because the calculated increase is below 50 cents and does not round up. And so in those circumstances, staff will accumulate the annual CPI increases and apply the accumulated rates in future years when it results in an increase to a whole dollar. The berthing and auto pay discount sections include language to specify that there will be no auto pay discount for skiff and kayak storage rental, and clarifies that the discount is available for slips, anchor outs, and mooring balls. The berthing advance pay discount stipulates that is only for tenants in good standing, and that berthing commercial discount will require proof of current registration with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The berthing security deposit fee was reduced from 2 months to 1 month. And for PPH, the berthing transient fee is recommended to be increased from 80 cents to $1 per foot, or a 25% increase, to be in line with the current market rates. OPM's rate is recommended to increase by the CPI, which is in line with market rates for the Bayside marinas. The late charge stated that it is for monthly berthing rentals, and staff recommends that any fee that is not paid in time be susceptible to a late charge. The availability of future liveaboard permits will be subject to a 10% liveaboard limit at each harbor. Pillar Point Harbor is slightly greater than the 10% limit, and we would reduce that through attrition. Certain fees that are listed and not used or not available are recommended to be deleted, and some fees are recommended to stay the same, such as the Sequoia and NEPA charges and crab pot staging. The fee schedule for permitted events has not increased since 2015. Therefore, the proposed rates are increased by 10.1%, which is equal to the accumulated CPI of 3% in 2016, 3.2% in 2017, and 3.9% in 2018. Rates are rounded up to the nearest $5 and therefore may not equal a 10.1% increase. If you have any questions or comments on that?
One of the questions I had, so our lessees, like the restaurants, the shops and all that, are they subject to this 2.9% increase?
Each of the leases had different language, and I haven't really reviewed those in depth, but I know we do send out annual letters increasing their rents and their deposits due.
Okay. Any other questions?
No questions from me.
I have a couple questions. So on the special events, like it says special events 5 and 6 for commercial, can you give some examples of what kind of events those are? Maybe John could do that. I don't, whoever knows.
Okay, what's that?
10-14.
Okay, thanks.
I should have brought my list. I know that Debbie was helping me with this, but I think generally that the more impact to district harbor facilities, the greater the fee. So I don't have the special event 5 and 6 in front of me, but
And you mean in the special event, isn't there like a policy or something on that we have?
There's a definitions page that goes through the impact, like she said, that it has on the harbor. So for example, special event 6 would be fish and fleet would fall into that category. I don't know that we've had something that's a 5 since I've been here.
Okay.
Something along with, lots of tents and music.
So what I would like to suggest is that whatever the policy is about special event costs, that come to the policy committee to look at. Because I think we've been meaning to do that for a really long time. And I think in the next couple years, the Maverick Surf competition permit is up. What year is that? Is that 2021, John? Do you remember? I think it's 2021, isn't it?
I believe it is 2021.
So it would be great for us to kind of get ahead of the curve and start to look at that policy, because it has been said often that the fee that we're getting paid doesn't cover the costs for the district. And when we look at the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we spent in legal fees related to that competition. It's just something we should definitely, take a close look at and see if it's set correctly or not and what the considerations are. I don't know, but I think it's never really been, there hasn't been a lot of thought put into that number. And I think that's the only thing that falls into that category 6.
I think the Mavericks would be an
Is it?
athletic event 4, which is water related.
Which is the same amount of money.
No,
Where is it?
it's under athletic event. And then they have, like, for example, non-resident permit fee is the $6,220 plus water-related fee of $5,330. So it's
Those 2 fees are combined.
yeah. You add
Mhm.
over $11,000.
Plus the application fee.
Mm-hmm.
How,
It seems a little complicated, this system, like,
this whole, schedule
uh-huh,
is primarily for, one-off special events. The Mavericks, and correct me if I'm wrong, Debbie, but the Mavericks was a contracted multi-year permit, so, had its own criteria. And the board, when the current Mavericks contract expires, or permit expires, prior to, we could then obviously bring to the policy committee and try to determine, what direction the board wishes to go with a new, maybe an RFP for, for proposers to be able to bid, if you will, on the ability to gain that permit, that
Mhm.
activity permit. But it's not, the Mavericks event is more like I guess a commercial activity permit than a special event permit, because it is multi-year, it's ongoing,
Well,
at least it has in the past. We
we-
could
we-
also just make it a 1 or 2 year.
well, John, seeing how it got into bankruptcy court as an asset, I think that the district would absolutely never want to have a multi-year permit again, because when we did that, we created an asset in bankruptcy court, and that cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees. If we had only had a 1-year permit, then it would never have become an asset in bankruptcy court. So those are the kinds of things that I
Mhm.
think we need to really sort out
That's interesting.
and make sure that we never make the same mistakes again, because that was such a huge mistake on the part of the board. And then also come up with a plan for what the fees should be, and I don't know what they should be yet.
Yeah, it is a different situation with the Mavericks than what is in mind with this schedule.
Okay.
A one-off marathon or bicycle race or something like that wants to utilize our parking area. That's what this schedule is more geared to.
Meant for?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think the Mavericks
I was gonna say,
competition.
they do pay annually, they pay an annual fee.
I think we have used a chart like this in the past to come up with the number. I'm not saying that that's what ended up happening the last time, because there was a lot of crazy stuff that went on when the lawyer basically brought the check to the meeting and all that happened. I don't think you were there for that. But we just, whatever we end up doing, I think it needs to be really clear and really well documented, and have expectations set well in advance for anyone that's interested in organizing that competition, because it just has been such a problem in the past, because it hasn't been clearly done.
I think we'll need to give a lot of thought to it, but unlike normal events in this schedule, there are a lot of other criteria in the current Mavericks contract.
Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point.
So,
Yeah.
we'll have to look at all that detail as we move forward.
Yeah, okay.
When does that permit expire?
It's in 2021.
Oh, okay.
Which seems like a long ways off, but I can tell you, once like it even gets a year out, there's just a lot of pressure to move things really quickly, and a lot of people banging on the door and a lot of demands, and it can get pretty crazy. So the further in advance that we could organize a plan for how to deal with it, the better, because then we have time to get the word out so that nobody's surprised and the board is really comfortable with how it's gonna work and all of that. I think would be really in the best interest of the district, because I think we have a real responsibility to make sure we never get into that situation with the bankruptcy that happened last time. That was so unfortunate. Okay, well, would anybody like to make a motion?
Can I just ask a quick question?
Yeah.
Filming and photography, is that just anywhere on Harbor District property?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I
What
think
does
I
that
understand.
mean exactly? I mean, anybody taking a picture?
For commercial purposes or just
Like-
for?
For commercial
Yes.
purposes, yeah.
Yeah, we just recently permitted a local university to be able to utilize our dock and a little bit of parking lot in order to shoot a student film.
And I'm just make a quick comment. Another purpose to have these permits is, it's not just to collect fees. It also gives the district control over what's happening, and that's a very important component of permitting. We're not just in it for the money, we're in it to make sure that whatever the event is done well and benefits the entire community. Yeah,
For sure.
And covers district costs
Yes.
as well.
yeah, definitely.
Increased staffing for the events.
Mhm.
So,
Okay.
I got a final comment before we pass this. I've been approached by a couple of commercial activity permit holders and a leaseholder about passenger service fees. I said, I'm not gonna take it to the board if they wanna make a presentation to the board, but I believe that there's a move afoot to possibly change that. So I'll just put that out there that we may consider it, and I don't know what the board will decide on it. I'm conflicted on it because I pay them myself.
And that's a fee for every passenger that a commercial boat takes out
Yes,
for whatever purpose?
yes.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Okay. We have a motion?
Second?
No, we don't have a motion. I'm
So
asking if we
So
have.
moved.
What are we moving?
The recommendation, let's see, recommend to approve the rates and fees amended to reflect increases of 3.9%, which is equal to the annual average increase in the 2018 Consumer Price Index for San Francisco, Oakland, Hayward, all urban CPI, index 1982 to 84 equals 100, and other changes as proposed. Uh-oh,
That's the,
That's it, amended.
I strike that.
okay.
I move to
Keep
approve
going.
the rates and fees amended to reflect increases of 3.9%, which is equal to the annual average increase in the 2018 CPI for the San Francisco Bay Area, and other changes as proposed, except for the increase to the recreational vehicle parking fee.
And I'll second.
Okay. No further discussion? All right, roll call?
Commissioner Mathush,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
President Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Riley.
Aye.
Okay, moving right along. Next we have item 11, which is administrative analysis, communications position description. And Julie's really working hard tonight with her item.
So the district currently has one unfilled senior administrative analyst position, and the position was created to help with the budgeting process and negotiations of MOUs. After a thorough review of the current staffing levels and the workload responsibilities of the Administrative Services Department, Staff created a position which identifies responsibilities that require an outward emphasis and excellent written and oral presentation skills and outstanding organizational skills. The proposed salary is the same as the accounting specialist and planner analyst positions, and this will assist in cross-training initiatives. Staff has worked with the Teamsters local union and has received formal approval of this position. And so staff recommends that the board approve the administrative analyst communications position and update the district salary schedule with a rate of $33.11 per hour for step 1, up to $44.38 per hour for step 7, and the same step increments as the planner analyst and accounting specialist position. The administrative analyst communications position would include responsibilities including ADA coordination, public outreach and social media coordination with consultants, grant writing, purchasing and contract management and coordination of the information technology functions, lease management, event and commercial business permitting, business process mapping to help in getting the new software system, and record retention management, and other duties as assigned.
Does anybody have questions about this?
I have a comment. I think this is something we sorely need, so I'm very happy to see it come before us. We had someone doing similar work, but they moved on, and we haven't really replaced the person to take on these tasks. So I think it's about time we got this.
Okay. Anybody else? So I agree with Ed. I'm really glad that it sounds like we're going to make an attempt to fill the position, and we're paying more of a living wage is what it looks like here, that we're increasing the salary. So would someone like to make a motion?
This isn't increasing the salary, it's just putting it at level with some of the other positions in the department.
Was there a salary before?
There was a salary for the senior administrative analyst, but this is a lower position than the senior. It's an administrative analyst position, which...
I have a question about that. With the senior position, did we ever have that position filled?
We never did, no.
Is this changing the title of the position at all?
The senior administrative analyst position was recommended as a non-union represented position. And this one is bringing it back to the same level that it used to be when it was filled, which was the administrative analyst position.
Okay, why is that happening? I'm just curious. Like, what's the logic behind that?
One of the things is that the union didn't fully buy into assigning some of the duties the administrative analyst position used to have, and then adding on a couple more because they thought it should be a union represented position. And the other thing is that the two higher level things, MOU negotiations, we won't need that kind of help for at least 4 years. And doing the budget work, I think that we have a lot of financial people in the department, so I wanted to kind of eliminate those two or higher position.
The senior administrative analyst position is the one that I have brought forward to help with HR, because we were lacking, and we still are lacking, in some of the HR-related functions that we used to have an HR manager for the district. we no longer have that. It was combined with the financial. So it was approved not for labor negotiations. I think you misunderstood maybe the information I gave you. It was, the payroll, the county specialist was supposed to help with the labor negotiation and providing confidential information. Not this position. This position was gonna be doing more confidential HR work, and that's why it was a senior administrator who was gonna actually supervise the 2 administrative assistants and assist with HR responsibilities. But now Julie's the director and she has her own, has had a chance to look at her own section and decided what she feels is more needed, especially with her accounting background. Maybe she doesn't feel that we need more of a person helping with budget or helping with HR. So this is her determination that we need more of a person helping with the things that she's saying that we need, like with the Facebook or the communications end of things. The ADA coordination was being done by the planner analyst before. So things have all moved around, basically. So now this is a position that she's creating and taking that vacant position and deleting that, basically, the senior administrator.
So I don't understand why it's a union position. Why can't there be a communications, like, director level person?
If that is something that we want to consider, we would have to rework this and make sure that none of the things that the administrative analyst used to do are into the higher level.
Such as, what is it that,
Well, it's like everything that's in black, basically.
everything is in black on our page?
On the position description.
Oh, over here, on page 11.3.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the administrative analyst position used to include everything that's in black. And so in order to get this at a higher level, we would have to remove those types of things and maybe create 2 positions, one higher level position and then a lower level position, so that we could get it out of the union bargaining unit. I think, supervising and management would probably need to be included in order to get that to a higher level also.
So grant applications could be part of a higher level position's job, because that's not part of the original job description. Is that how that works?
Right, well, and some of this, I tried to match up, what the essential functions were and make sure that the qualifications and knowledge and the ability to all had kind of the same emphasis on it. So there might be something in grants in black here.
Oh, I just see it in red, grant
Yeah,
applications.
and preparing grant applications.
Is a new thing that was added.
Right, grants, business process documentation, risk management.
The things that she added, she wasn't focused on trying to make it a non-union position. So the things that would need to be added are such higher level things such as management of, or supervising the 2 administrative assistants, doing more HR work or confidential work, or doing more other confidential work. I think you probably started from the old administrative analyst position, not from my senior analyst.
Right.
Right, so this is a different job description than the senior administrative analyst altogether. And this was a lower level position. This was the position that I think Low Hodges had previously.
Yeah, these are all essential duties that we need to to have done. Yeah, and we can always, hire later, and bring back to the board a revised job description for a more senior administrative analyst that may very well also have more responsibilities as far as communications, et cetera.
Okay.
I agree, and another reason, the reason I support it this way is because it provides a very defined set of work criteria that a person can focus on. If you make it so broad, it's gonna, number one, be difficult to find someone that can do all of that well. And
How much more could we ask them to do? I mean, is this not broad, Ed? This
Well,
is
that's my
insanely broad. I mean, who's
That's my
gonna
point.
do all that?
It can be broad and still be a senior level position. and
It
still be
seems super
unclassified.
broad to me.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it
but
can
if
be
you-
specific too, and still be a senior level
but that's
position.
my point, you can, the senior level position can do some of the things that are scribbled out here, some, like the HR stuff.
Well, I'm not talking about HR at all,
Yeah.
but I think that, I really like the idea of having someone that can help us with, communications, because we are outsourcing stuff right now that,
Yeah.
it's great that we're outsourcing stuff, and I think that it makes sense to have a consultant helping us. But I recognize that our needs are much greater than what a consultant can really do, who has other clients and so forth, to, address many things that have never been addressed in this district. So we have sort of this long list of things that need to be done from a communication standpoint that there's never been anybody to do, except for the very brief time that, that Ms. Hodges, is that her name, correct? Okay, worked for the district, and where she really did start to scratch the surface of some significant needs, and it was like a miracle had occurred. It was just like a whole new day for the district, and it was such a breath of fresh air that we were finally dealing with some of that stuff, and somebody knew how to do a PowerPoint presentation and whatever. But then she left, and we lost her to the Resource Conservation District because they were really smart, and they hired her away from us, and so that was a bummer. But whatever you think. I mean, if you think this is it, great. To me, it seems like a huge job description, and I would really hope that we could really focus on the communications piece a lot. And I don't know how we best do that because I haven't given it a lot of thought, but it just seems like that's an area that we need to focus on, because there are things like LAFCO and, keeping the district in the good graces of other higher ranking agencies. And to do all of that, we need good communications, and it's like been non-existent here. So, and it still is non-existent. So whatever we need to do to make it happen, works for me. To me, it doesn't really feel like a union job, that kind of position. But then again, I know that there are graphic designers in the union in San Francisco. So I know union jobs can encompass all kinds of different types of work, but it just kind of feels more like a communications management job is sort of what we need, but someone who's not just delegating, who's actually doing the work. And I think we're such a small agency, everybody has to wear a lot of hats, I get that, and roll up their sleeves and do work, because there aren't a lot of people to manage. But yeah, so those were just some things that jump out at me, and I don't want to see us lose this person again if we get somebody good to do the communications piece, because that really set us back when we lost her. That was a big setback, and we were just starting to make a little progress there, and then we haven't had anybody fill that position since. So I hope that we're gonna pay them enough to retain them and give them enough interesting work to do that they're gonna wanna stay working for our district. 'Cause I think that was part of the problem. If we ask people to do work that they're not very interested in doing, that's outside of their skill set or where they really excel, then there's so many other jobs in the Bay Area for creative people, they're gonna be gone. So if we wanna hire a creative person and we wanna have good quality work, we have to give them creative stuff to do and not a bunch of menial whatever stuff. So I think it's just important to think about that, because if we, I do think we have a need for that here, and I think it would be great for the district. So sorry to belabor it, but anyway.
Yeah.
And actually, just to give you a little information, I was here when Lo was here and she left. She wanted it to be a union position and it wasn't at that time. So making it a union would probably be the quickest way for you to accomplish what you want. And she didn't leave because of the salary at all. It was because she wasn't doing 40 hours of communications work. She was doing other work that may or may not have interested her or was her forte. So there were other reasons why she left. So what she's proposing is exactly what you sound like you need as communications and leaving it at, and the unions are gonna fight us because we've already tried this with them. They are gonna fight us if we try to put all those duties that are administrative analyst duties into a higher level position and try and make it an exempt position, a non-union position. It will take longer to get their buy-off, or if we even get their buy-off, to leave it as non-union. And
Well, I trust you guys know how all that works, because I certainly don't.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I just hope we can find a really creative person who can polish things here in a way that we haven't, and that we can find work for them that keeps them interested in being here. So, great, okay.
So do you need a motion or just a general vote?
Yes, we need a motion.
I'd like to move this board approve the administrative analyst communications position and update the district salary schedule with a rate of $33.11 per hour for step 1 up to $44.38 per hour for step 7 and the same step increments as the planner analyst and accounting specialist positions.
Second.
Okay, can we get a roll call?
President Brennan,
Aye.
Commissioner Matoush,
Aye.
Commissioner Lorenz,
Aye.
Commissioner Riley.
Hi.
Alrighty, let's see what we have here. Future agenda items. Does anybody have any future agenda items? Nope. It sounds like Tom had one earlier.
Well, I was counting on somebody else. I'm not gonna lobby myself to eradicate passenger service fees, but we'll see if these people wanna complete it before the board deadline, and at least wanna notice it. I'm not gonna be the one presenting the letter.
Okay. Then we have the activity report from John. If you wanna give us any highlights, John?
Yeah. At Copeland Harbor, we had an active month. 395 boat launches were recorded. We're still working on the finalizing the results of the invitation for bid for the launch ramp. As Commissioner Matoush mentioned earlier, it has been quite frustrating for everyone that we've not been able to make progress thus far. But it does look like the one bid that we did receive out of or for the invitation bid, we are working to negotiate an acceptable result to bring back to the board for approval. We hope to do that in June, at the June meeting. Occupancy at Pillar Point Harbor was 100% as it is now. Staff actually have worked to fit boats in wherever possible due to the salmon season. Staff did 14 search and rescues. April 19th, unfortunately, we had a drowning occur, a reported drowning at Poplar Beach, which our staff responded to and did a valiant effort to try to recover the individual, but unfortunately wasn't successful. He was later recovered. We had 34 patrol vessels and Deputy Harbor Master calls, 5 medical calls, 8 law enforcement calls, 11 environmental resource protection calls, for 45 allied agency engagement and assistance. Pillar Point Harbor staff helped the Marine Mammal Center recover 2 injured, distressed pinnipeds this month, and responded to another one again on Friday that Commissioner Brennan brought to our attention. The pinniped population is doing quite well, so there's more and more interactions, and unfortunately with that come more and more of the juvenile pinnipeds coming up on the beach, sometimes in distress or sometimes not. Sometimes when the Marine Mammal Center arrives, the animal has already gone back into the water and taken off, which is fortunate. They do great work, and as we're all aware, and are able to recuperate many of them that they do bring back to their facility. Oyster Point Marina, staff there did some rescue training with the U.S. Coast Guard. I've got some pictures there where they did some helicopter training as well. Incidentally, Pillar Point Harbor just did some last weekend as well. I attended, myself and the Assistant Harbor Master at Oyster Point, attended the May meeting regarding the development project. They anticipate getting the contractors there doing all the development project work, anticipate getting the marina back on the marina and the adjacent facilities, including the yacht club, all back on PG&E power by June 17th.
That's good.
Which is great. Everybody will be glad to be off generator power. It's been almost 9 months now. Pillar Point or Oyster Point Marina had roughly 78% occupancy. They've been hovering at between 78-79% occupancy. They had 9 vessel activities where they went out to assist other vessels in distress. 2 fire department assistants, 5 police officer assistants, and 2 Coast Guard incidents that we responded to within the bay, and then 27 routine Deputy Harbor Master calls, and 3 fish and wildlife assistants. Oyster Point Marina staff continue to work hard to bring all the vessels that are within the marina into compliance in an amicable manner, and staff there have been doing a great job of that. We've been maintaining our occupancy while still having the vessels that have been abandoned or in such poor condition that we require them to be removed. We've still been able to maintain our occupancy by getting more boats, more new customers.
And during all the construction,
Yeah.
which is amazing.
That's another
Yeah.
significant challenge.
Yeah.
At the meeting that we attended, it was Kilroy, and their contractors were very professional in their responses to the concerns that the tenants brought forward. I was glad to see that. And it seems they have, at these meetings, I've attended many of them, they've built up a level of trust, frankly, with the tenants. There's a level of trust relationship, which I thought was quite impressive, frankly. They responded to the concerns and gave specific dates of when they would have them repaired or looked at. One, for instance, for potholes, they said they would have them done next week, and there was no discussion about past times they had promised things and not come through. So
That's good.
that was all very positive.
How's the traffic situation there in the construction? Has that changed at all, you know?
The speed bumps, because now there is only one road going in and out of the peninsula, Oyster Point Peninsula. So the speed bumps were brought up. They have kind of, from the trucks going over them and all the vehicles going over one road, the speed bumps have kind of shrunken. They've been compacted. So again, since it's since that road's going to be in use for still
Maybe they're
several more,
sinking
Yeah.
the speed bumps.
since that road's going to be in use for several more months, they immediately said they would be readdressing those speed bumps.
Okay.
But they are limited to what they can do, which everyone seemed to understand because of the concerns from the fire trucks, the fire department, which they were able to discuss with the fire department to being able to install them initially. So, again, that level of trust was there, and I plan to follow up to ensure that they do fix the potholes and do address those speed bumps.
Right.
The traffic, because it is one road, is still a concern. Not as much driving down to and from the slips themselves, but exiting from that one road, there's no street light, and during the busier times, early morning and 5 o'clock traffic, when I was exiting there, I had to wait quite some time to make that left turn to leave. And then I think traffic is going to continue to be a concern. Traffic was backed up all the way to the highway. As this
Really bad.
as the development occurs and the new buildings are populated, I would anticipate the traffic only getting worse unless there's a significant traffic plan that I'm unaware of at present. We hope that there is.
When do they think the road project's gonna be finished? Do you have any idea?
No, they're driving pilings, now they're driving 1,500 pilings, which is quite remarkable.
Wow.
What are those for?
For the first building.
Oh, they are, okay.
They've already got a lot of the excavation work complete, and they're, last week they started driving some pilings, but they're doing it during working hours and not on weekends.
Do you know how deep they're going?
No, I don't. That's one of the questions
I'm curious.
we were curious about.
Gotta go really deep.
Millennium Tower.
Yeah, how deep were the Millennium Tower, and it not deep enough now?
Yeah, I don't remember, but there's some really good newspaper articles on that one,
Yeah.
for sure.
Anyways, staff are all motivated and excited. We're also down 3 deputy harbor masters at present. That makes the great work staff do a little more challenging.
Yeah.
But we are moving forward with a recruitment at present, and we've gotten what appears to be a lot of good applicants
Oh, good.
to interview.
That's great. Okay.
I had a question, John. At a point you mentioned, I think that there were 11 calls about environmental lead-related problems. Are they all about the same issue? Are they different issues?
They'd be different issues. Largely what they consider to be the environmental calls are people with flares and oil cans and this kind of thing that they have found and we end up disposing of.
Okay. Thank you.
Alrighty, so we're gonna wrap it up here soon. Does anybody have any standing committee summaries? Oh, we have one, finance. Do you wanna talk about that, Ed? Or Julie? See, where is that?
I don't, I think,
Okay,
Basically, at the finance committee meeting, there was a draft of the budget that was
Yeah.
presented.
Mhm.
And we discussed the details of that as we have done this evening.
okay.
I guess I could say one thing is that one of the purposes for having these committees is to bring the public in to voice their interest in what we're doing, whether it's the finance committee or whether it's the climate change resiliency or wildlife protection committees. And the results of this budget document are a good indication of kind of a collaborative effort with members of the public who are working with us in the finance committee. And it's kind of hidden from this meeting because they don't come here to report, we just report. So this is an opportunity to thank them too, because they've done some great work with us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Can I just make one comment, since this might be my last meeting? I'm gonna be going on leave again, my mom's real sick, so I may not be coming back, depends on her health. But as far as what Nancy said earlier, and going to LAFCO and asking that question about encumbrance method of accounting, the concerns I expressed at the finance committee, the first meeting where I attended, as well as the last board meeting, had nothing to do with the encumbrance method of accounting. A lot of cities and agencies use that method, and the city of San Diego did that too. But what the change that I had a question about, and I still have a question about, and I've spoken to Julie about it, is the change we're doing as far as our capital projects. We're not appropriating the funds at the beginning of the fiscal year for the projects that we plan to do in the coming fiscal year. We have changed that process. Last year, previous years, and the 3 cities that I looked into, City of Half Moon Bay, which our finance committee public member that sent us that document, City of Half Moon Bay, a small city in Southern California, City of Poway, City of San Diego, all of them budget and appropriate monies at the beginning of the fiscal year for capital projects. What you guys have decided to do, and Julie's okay with it, is, and I'm gonna, since I'm not gonna be involved anymore, I'm not gonna say any more about it. My problem with it, the only problem I have with it was that I couldn't understand the reasoning behind it. Why we were not gonna be budgeting and leaving it unappropriated as far as the monies that we expect to spend on capital projects. Now we're gonna be doing it on a monthly basis when the project comes to you, and appropriating at that time, in essence, changing the budget every month throughout the fiscal year. So in the past, we also never moved forward with spending the monies until the project was approved at the board meetings. The only difference now is that we're not even gonna budget the monies. We're not appropriating the monies at the beginning of the fiscal year. All we're appropriating is $200,000, and we're continuing encumbrances for the monies that were, the projects that were already approved previously. So I don't have any problems with the encumbrance method of accounting. That cities do that, and agencies do that, and districts do that. I totally understand that, and that's a good way to do it. My problem was that we weren't budgeting the monies for capital projects at the beginning of the fiscal year, and we were waiting on a monthly basis. That's all, I just wanted to clarify, and, you know, you guys are the decision makers, she's your director, whatever you guys wanna do is fine, you know, of course. So,
Thank you. While we're still on committees, and then I don't know if anybody has anything else, but we could end the meeting. I just wanted to mention that I think it would be interesting to have another outreach committee meeting soon, especially in light of, you know, kind of taking a revisit on, now that we've had social media going for a little while, and kind of check in with that and see how that's going and, you know, what's next. So Nancy's the chair of that meeting, or that committee, and I look forward to working with her on that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I thought the same thing when I received that last email about our progress so far, and, yeah, I will be in touch.
Cool. All right, I look forward to that. Do you have any committee meetings that are happening anytime soon that you want to mention?
No, because I don't have the date
Okay.
set up, but we will be very likely having our Wildlife Protection Committee meeting in June sometime.
Great. All right.
And one last comment,
Yeah.
just a reminder to the commissioners, is that you are welcome to attend any of our committee meetings, especially if you're interested in the details of how say, the Climate Change Resiliency Committee does what it's doing and what we present to the board, because there's usually lots of discussion that happens there that doesn't happen here. And the only criteria is that since you're not on the committee, you're not allowed to comment.
I did, you just reminded me that a member of the public, Mr. Woodell, had contacted me, and he wanted to participate in the Climate Change Resiliency Committee. I think his interest had to do with electric vehicle charging.
Mm-hmm.
So I just meant to mention that
Okay,
too.
thanks.
Okay, would someone like to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
I'll second. All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.